How's it going, everybody? Today we'll be discussing the biomechanics of perhaps the most common sporting movement in the world, the instep kick. To do so, we'll divide the movement into 5 components: the approach, backswing, force production, foot contact, and follow through. Let's get started. First up is the approach, where the individual closes in on the ball. The important thing here is the angle of approach. Novice kickers will generally approach the ball head-on. However, according to Isakawa and Lees, to produce greater lower limb velocity and ball speed, athletes should approach the ball from a 45-degree angle, as shown here. After the approach is the backswing, where the individual cocks their leg back in preparation to strike the ball. For simplicity's sake, we'll focus only on the kicking leg, or in this case, the right leg. This component begins as the kicking leg leaves the ground and the planting leg moves towards the ball. It is completed as the kicking leg reaches maximum extension and the planting leg makes contact with the ground. This movement is characterized by extension and abduction of the acetabulofemoral joint, flexion of the tibiofemoral joint, and plantar flexion of the talocrural joint. The gluteus maximus and medius work concentrically to extend the hip. The gluteus medius and gluteus minimus also work concentrically to abduct the hip. To flex the right knee, we see a concentric contraction from the long head of the biceps femoris, as well as a concentric contraction from the semitendinosus and semimembranosus. The gastric nemius also works concentrically to plantar flex the ankle. Although the hamstrings are responsible for hip extension and knee flexion, a 1990 study done by Hoy suggests that because of hip and knee positioning during the backswing, the hamstrings exert much more torque around the knee rather than the hip. Furthermore, a 1996 study done by Sorensen observed eccentric contractions of the hip flexors and knee extensors during the backswing, suggesting they play an important compensatory role in controlling the leg as it moves posteriorly along the sagittal plane. Following the backswing is the force production component, where the individual swings their leg to meet the ball. This movement is characterized by flexion at the hip, extension at the knee, and continued plantar flexion at the ankle. According to Floyd, flexion at the hip is achieved primarily by a concentric contraction of the iliacus, the psoas major and psoas minor, and the rectus femoris. In order to extend the knee, the quadriceps, namely the vastus lateralis, work concentrically. Finally, an isometric contraction of the gastric nemius keeps the ankle plantar flexed. It should also be noted that the quick eccentric stretch of the hip flexors and knee extensors during the backswing allows for a more powerful force production phase. Next, we have the foot contact component, or the instant the foot comes into contact with the ball. The main joint movement here is plantar flexion of the ankle. This is achieved through an eccentric contraction of the tibialis anterior. According to Powers and Hawley, foot contact lasts anywhere from 6 to 16 milliseconds, depending on ball inflation. This period of contact is vital in deciding ball speed and trajectory. Striking the ball lower creates a higher trajectory, and higher a low trajectory. According to Kellis and Caddis, striking the ball higher up on the dorsal side of the foot creates the greatest ball speed. Conversely, striking the ball closer to the toes leaves an athlete vulnerable to a posterior ankle impingement. The final component of the instep kick is the follow-through, or the deceleration of the kicking leg. In addition to deceleration of the leg, this component functions to maximize foot contact with the ball in order to increase transfer of kinetic energy. This movement is characterized by eccentric contractions from the hip extensors and abductors and the knee flexors. All 3 of the gluteal muscles work eccentrically at the hip, while the hamstrings work eccentrically at the knee. These eccentric contractions protect the body from injury by dissipating kinetic and elastic forces generated by the kicking leg. However, because this is an abrupt slowing of a limb, hamstring strains are at risk during this component. Well, that's it for the biomechanics of the instep kick.